Let me just open up a recent project here. What have we worked on? Handgun? Sure. I'll open that up. Go back into ZBrush here, and let's go to, let's bring our brush menu back over here. So on our canvas here, if we're going to be exporting textures, sometimes it's useful to have a nice square canvas, so at least you know what the resolution is going to be. This one's kind of just vague as to what's actually going on here. In fact, if we go over here to our document, drag that over here, and we do the zoom, you're going to see we can kind of zoom out of the document. My background color is very close to that gray. If I go over here and just change that background color a little bit darker here, so you can kind of just see, that's gross. I don't want it red. Oh my God. Hold on. Let me click that color. There we go. Now when we go to document, background, I can just drag over here. There we go. Okay. So now you can kind of see that background color difference there a little bit. By default, I have it saved to where I don't have the range turned on in here. That's just because it doesn't, it kind of, when you go to compress the video or when you stream the video, it can kind of get a little bit crumbly in there. So I just opt out of that. So first thing we're going to do, I mean, if we go in here to, instead of zoom, do actual, that's what your actual document is. So if we drag out a star, for example, then we go into edit mode and we make our color white here. You can make a square selection of this to height. So if you hold down shift, or I mean, if you drop it to your canvas by going out of edit mode, and then you go in here to your tool palette, and then you grab your MRGB Z grabber. So M is material, RGB is color, and then Z is height grabber. So that's going to grab your texture and stuff. So if you start dragging this one around and then you hold down shift, that'll used to snap it to a square. Now I guess you got to kind of eyeball it. Or is it alt space bar? No. Okay, well, eyeball a square, and now you can grab the texture information off of here, and then you can grab the height. Now if you want this to render as a normal map, you're going to have to go into your materials here. Let's go ahead and bring back our polymesh here. Control N to clear our canvas, and if it ever does this, just go from freehand, and it says, wait, I have freehand, but drag rect is selected. Just select off that, and then back on drag rect, and you're good to go. Go back in edit mode, and then go to your materials here, and go to the normal RGB material here. So now that you have this, now you can export a normal map. Now this one's a little intense, so what you're going to have to do is when you go out of here, go to render best, and that'll kind of knock it back into a normal map that's probably a little bit more you're used to looking at here. And then you can grab your MRGB Z grabber, and now you can grab this. Now again, I'm eyeballing this, and then you can go here to texture, and you can export this texture. So again, I'm eyeballing this. Let's go ahead and do it a little nicer. So what we're going to do here, and you can export both of these into Painter. So here's the height map you can export, and then here's your normal map. Okay, so let's go to document, and we're going to go to, let's turn off proportional here, because the proportional is going to keep these, you know, kind of 16 by 9 or whatever this is. So I'm going to turn off proportional, and we're going to change this to a 1024, hit tab, 1024, enter, resize. Yes, resize the document, control N to clear. And then we're going to go back into our document here and see how I can't see the edges. Just take the zoom and zoom out so you can see the edges. If this was a 2048, you'd have to zoom way out. It's a lot of pixels. And you don't, when you're just sculpting, you don't want to be working with a massive document. That's just a waste of resources. So it's two different things. Let's get something a little bit more interesting to capture here. So I'm going to go into edit mode here. And again, we have our normal map here. If we don't, we just have matcap gray. We can just use this while we're working. So I can go to BI brush insert. Let's go to the IMM Boolean here. And then if I hit W, I've got my gizmo. And with that selected, I can now just cycle through these objects here. So let's say we want to take some of these and put them as a normal map or a height map into Painter. Any one of these, look. Let's do, and you're not stuck to just using this one. You can go in here or using whatever direction comes in. If you like one of these, let's say, where was that one? This one, no. So this one? One of these was coming in sideways. Anyway, you can go through here and you can just go to the side and you can rotate this down and then just move your camera. Or, you know, you don't even have to rotate it. Just move your camera and you just capture from this side. But let's say we want to capture this one, right? So I'm going to go to document, zoom out, make sure I can see it all. Let's go ahead and fill this up. And you're going to see by default, if I want to capture this, I'm going to hit Q to go into draw mode. If I go here to instead of doing MRGB Z grabber, I can just go to alpha, grab dock, and now I have the height information. Now if I hover over this, you're going to see it's kind of faceted. It's not really smooth, so when I draw this out again, it's going to be kind of choppy. So what I'm going to do is, there's two ways you can do this. You can just hit D to turn on dynamic preview, and now when you go to alpha grab dock, it'll go ahead and just grab that height information. It'll be nice and smooth. So you don't even have to go in here to geometry and subdivide. You can just use your, I need to close these by default here. You can just D and Shift D toggles on and off your dynamic subdivisions here. Now let's say you wanted to capture a normal map. So that's where we just go into our normal RGB Z grabber, and if it's a little too faceted still, just go into your dynamic, change your smooth subdivisions up. There you go, nice and smooth. Of course, you're going to want to do, and you don't have to drop it to the canvas now, because you don't have to do our mRGB Z grabber. That's when you would have to, like, if I click this, it's going to say, do you want to switch? Okay, and now I can use it. Let's hit Control N to clear our canvas. We'll just drag this back out on our canvas here, go into edit mode. You can also hit F to frame that, and it'll get really close to the border edges. If you want to just kind of knock that back, just use your camera rotational stuff to kind of move that back. So for F to frame, and then just kick it back just a little bit. If you want to do that a little bit more precisely, I guess, or you're a little afraid to just use that, you can also use your Zoom 3D here in the transform menu. It used to be over here in R7. They've moved it up here. Same thing with these document controls. They've moved them away to kind of clear this area out a little bit, I think. So anyway, now that we have this, again, you need to go to your render, best render. Oh, and you also want to turn off shadows. So, and just in case, and I don't think it's doing anything. It doesn't look like it's really grabbing any shadows, but just in case, and it'll probably go a little bit faster. Go to render properties. You don't need shadows with your normal map here. So now you can go to render best. There you go. So now that this is a best render, you can then go to texture grab dock, and then there's your normal map. You can go to texture export. And then we can just throw this on our desktop as test, PSD. And you know what, for the height as well, let's go ahead and do another alpha, grab dock, and then we'll go to export test A for test alpha. And then we can go back into Substance Painter here. So here's that beta gun that we made. This tutorial will be coming out in September, and I'll go ahead and just do a video companion for it, so that'll be kind of fun. Let's go ahead and just delete all this. Blah. There we go. You're gone. And so now that we have this here, let's go ahead and do a little bit of stamping here. So basically for alphas, what you're going to have, let's go ahead and do, that's the best way to do this. Let's do a fill layer here. And this will be a little bit less destructive. You can just do a normal layer and just stamp height onto it, but we're going to be a little bit more controlled in what we're going to do here. So on this fill layer, we'll just call this height. And now with this height fill layer, we can add a black mask. And now wherever I put an alpha through this mask, it'll go ahead and add height. Now I need to tell this layer, you know, I can tell this layer when I click it, I can say, what do I want you to control? I want you to control color, metallicity, roughness, normal map, height, etc. If I just wanted to control height, I can just turn all this stuff off. Just kind of simplify it down. And then this height channel, I can bump it up. Now you see nothing happens because nothing's going through that. And I'm going to go to my display settings here, and we're going to turn off some of these viewer settings. I'm sorry. It would be the shadows. I can go ahead and just turn that off. And also, I think I probably have under common parameters here, medium. I'm going to go to low. Let's get it to run a little bit faster while we're working. So under this height menu now, if I go to my brushes here, I can just take my default hard brush, and then if I'm painting white on this black mask, as I'm painting on this, I'm getting that height information from that. If I go back to my brushes here and say we want to do like road stripes or stitches, we'll take the stitches brush, and then as I'm making this alpha, it's bumping out. If I also wanted to have color, I can go back to this layer and say, well, no, I want it to be height stitches with a color. I want it to be red stitches here. So now that that is a fill layer with red stitches, I can now go back to this height channel and start making stitches. I can also, on the fly, now that I've made that, I can go back to this and I'm like, you know what? I want that height information to bump in. So bump it in. You know what? I don't want red. I want blue. And you know what? I want to turn on metallicity because I want it to be metallic. And then just make it all metallic. And you know what? I changed my mind. I want my height here to be positive. And now it'll bump out. It'll be metallic. So when I move this around, it'll be a different material here. And I want to play with the roughness too. So I want it to be a very shiny metal on there. And if I do another fill layer below it, I can control what the other material is. So we'll just call this base. And we'll color this like a dark gray. And we'll make this really rough. So it's kind of matte. So now you can kind of see the difference between those two. So that's why I was doing a fill layer with an alpha, because I can control it a little bit better. Now, if we go over here to our alphas, now let's do this. Let's go back to our brushes here. We've got our default hard here. And in this brush, you're going to see we have an alpha place here. So if I click this little down arrow, or I just click this, you can select alphas over here. You can also go over here to your alphas, and you can just drag them from here. You can just go, hey, substance, and we'll just drag it into our alpha here. And now we can just kind of stamp where we want this to go, and it's going to inherit that height information and that material information there. Again, let's go ahead and really crank up that height. There we go. Or you know what, let's crank it in. Boom. Now it's embedded in our object. I'm going to make this a little bit lighter so it'll be a little more obvious here. And you know what, metallic's cool, but we'll make it non-metallic so we can kind of see a little bit better. Cool. So now that we have that, let's bring in our alpha. So we're going to go to our desktop here. Desktop. Computer's running a little slow. Cool. So test A, I'm going to drag this in. Get off of there. And then here I'm going to say I want this to go into my alphas, and I can do it to the current session. So when I close Painter, it'll disappear. I can do it to my project. So when I save my handgun project, when I open it back up again, it'll open with my handgun. Or I can save it to my shelf, and it'll always open when I open Substance Painter. Let's go ahead and just do current session. There we go. And let's say, okay, so there it is. There's our test alpha here. So now with this test alpha, I can go back to our height. And you know what? If I want to not change this height, this painting on this directly, I can just add a paint layer. And that'll just be an extra paint layer I can kind of paint on. And now I can drag this alpha onto my brush. And now I can use this. I can go through here, and this is a cool thing too. So I'm going to go to my orthographic view so I can snap to the side here. You know what? Let's do this. I'm going to add a black mask just to get rid of all the stuff we've painted. And now I'm going to add a paint layer just to make it a little less destructive here. I can hold down Control and I can rotate this around. I wish I had that functionality in Photoshop. I don't think I do, but that would be so useful. And then I can, what am I doing? Control right click. If you hold down Control, it'll show you all on the left hand side there, it'll show you all the options that you need to change your brush around. So Control left click is rotate, Control right click is size, and then you can also do a couple other things here, but that's pretty much all I'm going to use here. So now if I can just kind of position this here, and then I can just stamp, and then I'll go ahead and create that inverted stamp here. And then again, because this is a fill layer, we can just go over here to height and bump it out. We can change the color. Let's make it, you know, a light gray or maybe bluish, whatever we want to do. We can also make it emissive if we want to. So if we go over here to texture settings here, we can add an emissive channel. Let's go ahead and, where are you at? Transmissive, reflection, glossiness. Oh, I've already got emissive turned on in this project. So we can turn on emissive, and then this emissive color, we can just make it whatever color we want. And we'll probably choose like a bluish, so we can kind of make that match. So now when we turn that shadow around, you're going to see, ooh, we got emissive on there. So let's go ahead and just carry that light around. And this, moving the environment map around for the lighting is just shift right click. So we've got that height, and you can use that, and we imported that from ZBrush. Now, it's not quite as robust as some of the alphas in here are for our brushes here. For example, if I go back into my brushes here, you can go to, we'll grab that stitches again, and you can see there's a lot of stitch options. So not only with the stitches brush, and these are with substances. If you want to know more about Substance Painter, Substance Designer, I have that on my channel. If you go to my YouTube channel here, there's a Substance Painter Quick Start and a Substance Designer Quick Start, and I'll walk you through the basics. They're a little bit dated, or you can go to the Substance Painter, Substance Designer, Allegorithmic website, and Wes McDermott will walk you through it. He's really good. But you can go in here and you can change the hardness of that alpha there, and then also the squeeze a little bit. But down here under the options, where are those at? Or maybe I'm thinking of a different one. Stitches 2, Stitches 3. What am I looking for? Grayscale, backface culling. There we go. I guess, did they take that out? Road stripes, stitch custom. Okay, so I guess stitch custom. I have stitches small that I save. Let's go to stitch custom here, and now you can change the stitch type, and you're going to see here's the alpha representation of that. So we go up here and change our size. We can kind of see that a little bit better. And now we can go over here to cross, and we can stitch type line. We can change it to stitch type crosses, and then you can change the blur on the cross if you want to. If you change it to line, there's a couple line option here. You can change the count up, and that'll do like 2 or 3 of them at a time. Oops. You can change the spacing between those counts, so you can do 3 at a time. You can scale Y to make them shorter or longer. You can scale X to make them thinner or fatter. And then the stripes opacity, there's stripes on there if you want them, but you can turn that all the way down to 0. And now you can go through here and you can use that type of functionality. You know, super powerful, super robust, and this is a lot cleaner than trying to put stitches on your model, and it's a little more destructive. And you can also do straight lines in here, which is nice. And by non-destructive, I mean I can always go back in here and go, you know what, and it's so clean too, but I can always go back in here and go, you know what, I don't want them that high. If I did this in ZBrush, I'm kind of stuck. I'd have to rebake it to make them less high and go back through and like manually adjust the nano mesh, I suppose, on my stitches to maintain that functionality. But in here, all I got to do is take this height and just drop it down. No big deal. Cool. And you can also do a little bit fancier stuff. If we go ahead and Control D this one here, we can go into our height for this one, and we can go do a negative height on this one. And then we can go in here and we can take this and we can blur, let's add a blur. So we're going to add a filter. We're going to add a blur. So height, stitches, copy here. And now with this one, you can kind of make it look like it's embedded. So you're going to have the height coming through. And I'm going to, you know what, I just want to do height for this one. So I'm going to turn off all this other stuff at height. So now you can kind of see it looks like it's kind of punching in and then also popping out, like the area around it's deforming inwards to kind of compensate for that. And if you don't like that or you want to change it, just go in here and just adjust that height. So very non-destructive. And if you don't like something, you can just erase it out of here or just paint over it with black. Whew. So let's talk a little bit about normal maps. So, and that's the exact same thing. So if you can do height, you can do normal maps. All it is going back here to our desktop here. Here's our test. So on this one, if we go down to textures, there we go. You're going to see, oh, maybe it's not textures. Where is it? Is it alphas, projects, brushes, filters? I don't use the normal maps very often. It's not in our tools, is it? Not in our brushes. Where do they hide all this stuff? Let's see. Oops. Let's go to all, and we'll type in, that's a normal map for the gun. Oh boy. Oh boy. Where am I at? Alphas, grunges, procedurals, textures. I swore I was under textures here. Oh, hard surface. So here's all their normal maps for their hard surface stuff. Now, cool thing about this one is, let's go ahead and make just a regular plain old layer, not a fill layer, because on this layer we want to paint our normal information here. So here's our normal. So if we click this one here, and we drag it into our, so this is our brush, we drag it into our normal color here. Now when we go through here, we can just stamp this normal information, like so, or you can just stamp and then hold down Shift and then stamp that in. You can change the spacing if you wanted to space those out, so we can change that spacing up. So now when you do this and then Shift click, that'll go ahead and just drag out a bunch of them. Let's change that spacing. There we go. Let's try this. Here to here. Awesome. There's also a couple fancier ones in here, I think. If you go to like rectangle here, and then we just drag this over to our normal map. Let's go to another area here. So we've got a rectangle here, and we can stamp this rectangle, right? On this one, you can go pattern size X. You can make it a thinner rectangle. You can make it a longer rectangle. You can make it make that bevel thicker here. So when you stamp this in, you can get that kind of look. You can make it from pillow to in. That'll give you a little different look. Or you can go to out, and that'll give you a little different look. So these are a little bit more robust of a sample. Some of these things are just taken from, it looks like the hard surface stuff from Gumroad here. So, and we'll talk a little bit about that too. So we can just go ahead and stamp that in, and then you get that information there. So, and that just has a normal map stamp. So when you bring your normal map in, we would go to test here, just drag this in, and then we'll go in. You bring it as a texture, and then we'll just say for current session import. And now when we go to our textures here, there's our texture here. We can just throw this one in, and now we can stamp. Oh, you know what? I probably should have done black for that. Yeah, so when we go back into ZBrush here, when we texture grabbed our document, it's going to come in as that background color here. So go to here to color, I'm sorry, document, background, and just change that to black. And now when you import this, that'll export as, let's see, make sure I'm not lying to you here. Texture, grab doc. Yeah, so this one will have, see how it's perfectly transparent? That's what you want to bring in. Let's go ahead and export that as test. Correct. And now we'll go back in here to Substance Painter, and then we'll go back in here to our, there you go. Geez, I don't know why it's being such a pain. Test correct. Go into our texture for the current session. Test correct. Let's see if this works. Material resource test correct. I'm going to have to figure out how to do alphas out of there. And it seems like it did it. Let's also change the hardness. There we go. So control, right click, and up and down will change that hardness. You want that hardness all the way up. And then alpha, hardness, normal map. It looks like it's correct, but it's not. So I'm going to have to, you know what? If I open that in Photoshop, let's give that a shot. Sorry, I didn't want to go off on a tangent here. I'm trying to think of the best way to export out of here because it's transparent in ZBrush, but it's not transparent necessarily in here. Let's go to our desktop here, test correct. Yeah, okay. Well, this is easy enough to fix. So we're going to hit W, go ahead and make a selection on the black area here. W. Oh, goodness. Okay. Magic wand. Go ahead and do this. Double click that background, and then we can hit delete. And now we can save this as a PSD or a PNG. Let's go ahead and file. Let's go ahead and save PNG desktop. Let's see if that'll work. Okay, sorry, little tangent. All right, is this one right? Okay, there you go. Now it seems to be working. Now when we stamp, yay, we're getting that alpha, that normal map information. Whew. Okay, so that was height, and that was normal map from ZBrush. Let me hop through here real quick, make sure I didn't miss anything. Okay, everybody, thanks for showing up. Got a quick question. Bland's asked, got a quick question about ZBrush.